Thank you, Will, and welcome to this, the final session of our Federation's Focus events. We've got now a vendor's view of the creation and distribution of content for sports federations. Thanks very much, Sam, Mathieu, Tom, and Chris for joining us. So we'll get started straight away. Sam, we'll begin with you, if we may. Can you give us an idea of what you feel, from Vizrt's perspective, what Federation's main priorities are when it comes to creating and sharing content? What are they trying to achieve, would you say?
I think when you talk to a lot of federations, George, they talk about owning the eyeball. So it's about gaining as many views and likes and shares as possible. And I think it depends on the federation, but certainly there are some federations where their um, events, their live events, are quite far apart. So they want to keep their fans engaged during that period, and then they want to work around the live event as well. And I think creating immersive experiences, XR graphics, data-driven graphics. For us, that's the business we're in for them, and also trying to support them with making that content as cheaply as possible. So cloud production is something that we obviously try and support them with as well. And then finally, on for Vizrt, it's the MAM side of things and the storage, and then how they can use their archive to continue to appeal and grow their fan base.
And Tom, would you say from Imagen's perspective, is it a similar kind of thing that you're picking up in terms of the objectives that you see that federations have?
Yeah, I think from us, the majority of our customers are sports federations as a business. I'm not sure the latest count, 55, 60 sports federations that are customers who traditionally have just used Imagen for maintaining their archives and allowing their sponsors and broadcast partners to have access to content, to make interesting programming, etc. But to externalize and make their archives available to traditional channels. What we found in the last few years is a request from our clients, and most of our development is customer driven development. A request for more ways of capturing social generated content, user generated content, and integrations with other technologies, some sort of third party apps and things to capture sort of around the periphery of matches. So not just about the content of a sports event itself, but everything that goes around the periphery. And to Sam's point, content that can engage the fan when they're not watching the game itself. That's fascinating. And I mean, even now down into sort of the e-game elements of it as well, and e-leagues. That's another area of ways to sort of fill the airways and keep people engaged. But I mean, ultimately, sport and being a sports fan is a social undertaking. You follow a club with your friends, with your sometimes even it's about competitive rivalry with other friends as well. So lots of social content, lots of interactive content, and we're finding more and more now. Our federations are looking to get more content on social channels. They're tracking. They're wanting to own the eyeball, as described, and so more and more of what we're finding is that we've been asked for more analytics, more uh, I don't know, information about what content is performant, what content is successful, where it's being distributed, so that can ultimately inform the federation of what more content they should be putting out there or seeking to capture. So yeah, it's changing, it's evolving, and it's an exciting time.
And Mathieu, what would you say are the main priorities? Is it boosting, creating content so they can boost direct revenue, or looking to increase participation, deepen that relationship with fans or viewers? What do you think are the top priorities from your experience at Chyron?
I think clearly, and to go along the same line as my peer here, we're seeing a major trend with especially federations and leagues and clubs in really finding the right balance between ultimately what they're trying to do with servicing the right deals, obviously, and also having a level of direct engagement with fan. And the way usually we've seen this being achieved is through finding original content that they can use for the different outlets and different ways of producing and delivering the content, usually with obviously a technology aspect to it, finding new ways to engage the viewers through interactivity, through data, whether technical data really for the hardcore fans or more light data to, broaden up the potential horizons and maybe acquire even new audiences in some ways. One of the things we've seen a lot of traction, and momentum, and especially over the last couple of years, is in the different type of formats. They need to find a way essentially to find format that suit the audience, where that audience is, and depending also on the I guess the segmentation of that audience. So there are, we provide options, or my peers here also have very complementary solutions that really help define what are the target audiences and cater to different experiences in the end. Yeah.
And Chris, MediaKind, I guess, is dealing with a slightly different end of things to some of the others, dealing with the distribution of that content as well. So when it comes to sharing that content and kind of helping to get that in front of viewers and fans, what are the kind of key aims and objectives there?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? Because we do sit at that other side. So, the other guys here are very much focused on that. How do you create? How do you present the content? For us, it's about how do we get it to the fan, the subscriber, and how do we maintain that engagement? And a lot of the work we've been doing has really been in two areas, right? Entitlements. That's key to any platform and any delivery, especially when it's a direct kind of relationship between a federation and a consumer, and really looking at how we can make those entitlements much more dynamic and tiered. So actually, in doing that, you're reducing essentially the impact on any subscriber or fan on how much it's going to cost them or what they have to invest to get access to it through a D2C platform, and actually making it much more manageable. Just paying for or just accessing the last 10 minutes of a match, right? Everything, your friend messages you like you're in the last 10 minutes of a football match and it's crunch time, it's 1-1 and everything's going off. You want to join and you want to see that match. It's that type of access that we want to try and promote and enable, because that does help then people get access, and it does help that fight for eyeballs, as was indicated earlier, right? Because there's like 20 different services that I could go and subscribe to today. So that's one part. And I think the other part, right, if we think the real focus, ultimately the federation's focus is not direct revenue from a streaming platform. It's about indirect revenue, brand value, sponsorship reach, right? So that means data. The only way to gain and access that data is obviously to spread your access points as wide as possible across many different platforms, but also then to keep people in your environment for as long as possible. And I think that's one of the other areas we look to around video quality and quality of the service that we provide through our platform, because the longer you keep people engaged and in there, the more you learn about them, and therefore the more kind of indirect and business value you can drive.
So you mentioned that issue around access. How do you feel that federations are best able to manage that balance between attracting new fans and viewers, whilst also kind of serving existing kind of die-hard, really knowledgeable fans, with the latter group, I guess, potentially being willing to pay for access and for more premium content, whereas new entrants perhaps less willing. So how do federations go about kind of striking that balance?
I think that's a huge challenge, because you've got so many dynamics there. You've got content rights deals, you've got various broadcasters and service providers who will be warehousing lots of content that could be used by the federation to help engage. You need to spread the content creation piece among creating short, focused, personalized snippets that will attract that new fan and that new audience, but also providing the rich data and access to the content that a dedicated fan will need. So it's a really difficult balance, and I think a lot of the federations have to really look at their rights deals, especially as they come up for renegotiation, and try and work out, what's the balance between my digital portfolio and my broadcast portfolio. How can I use each of those to access my consumers and my fans? And then how does that change, as maybe they move into new territories and into new countries and expand? But yeah, it's a huge challenge.
And Sam, what role really does the presentation of that content play? So I'm thinking specifically in terms of those knowledgeable fans and that group, that set of viewers ultimately that some of the federations will be looking to reach and to service. What role does graphics play in that, and the ability to kind of present that content?
Well, I think graphics plays a huge role because, especially when you align it with data. So, every live sports event delivers data. And I think the one thing that the federations do have is that they generally own a lot of that data. And so, if they can use graphics to visualize that data, and they can find examples in the footage to show that data, analyze it, create a visually compelling experience for them, then they will continue to engage people and keep their fans interested. I mean, a lot of the challenges that people say when you do these surveys, they talk about year-round content. So if you look at the Grand Slam tennis tournaments, they are 2 weeks of the year. That's all they do. I mean, they go on for 200 hours of broadcast time in those 2 weeks, but for the remaining 50 weeks of the year, they've got to use that content to engage their fans, and they can do that using stories. I mean, Roger Federer retires, every single Grand Slam would be showing, the moments that he won their tournament. But then you can also, I think, attach the footage to the data, and some of them do it very cleverly. And as I say, I think the data is another really key way. I worked at SailGP for a while, and we were creating billions of points of data. And so, when you're creating that much data, you've got those much opportunities to really showcase the bits that you don't necessarily see in the live. And I think that's the crucial part. It's about fine tuning what you should show. There's no point just showing goals and goals and goals because everybody's seen those. So it's finding those other elements that is important, I would say. And data helps with graphics.
Mathieu, same question to you as well. Really, how do you think federations best go about making sure those knowledgeable fans feel served?
Yeah, I think to go back into what Sam was explaining just now, there is clearly a level of, or I guess, different levels of curations around the data that can be done. I mean, I think historically we've seen, obviously, graphics driven by data is not a new concept. A lot of broadcasters have used that over the last couple of decades, I suppose. Now, what's new, and I think what the OTT platforms, the social platform are also allowing, is to curate other kind of experiences, still leveraging data. So either more data or different data. One of the things we're seeing is typically people starting to build experiences around, tactical feeds, let's say, in football or soccer, where this is the kind of data you don't necessarily see on regular broadcast. Nevertheless, that's the kind of data the hardcore fans are really caring about. That's kind of really going the extra mile in understanding the game, understanding the plays, player positions in the pitch, things that are not necessarily for the general public, however, actually have a lot of value for the fans, for the teams, even themselves, the coach, and something that can be leveraged. So I think it's about creating those different experiences and then allowing that content to flow where the audience is. Again, to go back into one of the points that was made earlier, we see typically a lot of content being created or produced more or less during the event, during the game, or a little bit before, a little bit after. But I think the challenge level that, so through the time, well in advance, well before and after the game, you keep on seeing novelty content, the behind the scenes type of content, the post-match analysis by the coach. And traditionally that content, at least on regular broadcast, was not available. Now those new platforms, new ways of creating the content make that possible to share with a wider audience, essentially. And so on the data visualization side, this is our job to help facilitate these kind of experiences through interactivity again, through curated data feeds that are being selected and catered for the different target audiences.
Tom, a point that Mathieu and Sam both made was around that year-round kind of provision of content, not just during a match or during a tournament. What's the best way for a federation to go about that, would you say? And I'm also interested to hear your thoughts on where archive content sits within that approach as well.
You know, one of it's a really good one actually. One of the most impressive uses of archive that I saw, one of our clients, of course, was with the Badminton World Federation during COVID, and how they managed to soar when there weren't any events being played. They managed to soar up the tables of performance on social, getting on sport on social, engaging with fans more than FIFA were, more than some of the the really big federations were. And the way they did that was simple. They had the foresight to digitize a lot of their back catalogue of content. Fortunately, did that prior to COVID, so it was available and accessible to them. So they had a lot of content that hadn't been seen for a long time, and they gamified it, and they created engagement around it. They created I don't know. I don't think literally, but like spot the shuttlecock. What happened next? All these sorts of very, very simple things on social channels that meant that the people who were watching that weren't just seeing a broadcast of stuff. They were engaging with it. They were opining on it. They were asking for more. Oh, do you have any more of this? And a community spirit gets built up around that sort of thing. And the results were really, really impressive. I know we don't watch an enormous amount of badminton in the UK, but as a global sport, it's an enormous, enormous sport. So that, again, that's a really, really nice example of just simple, innovative use of back catalogue of content. And to that mind, it's about, with those guys, it was there. They were storytelling around content, archive content. But and I look at the different types of fans. You're talking here about the hardcore fans. They want stats. They want data. They want to know how fast this player ran, how many miles he covered, etc., etc. Whereas you look at sort of a younger generation, they want to see keepy uppies in the changing room. They want to see somebody doing a backflip, or whatever, running around their garden. They want much more about the human story and the people who are participating in sport than just the event itself. So. But if you've got an innovative team, bright people around you, a bright marketing team, they give them some access to content. They'll find stories to tell. There's enough talent in these organisations.
So on that point around the archive content and giving them access, is it something which you think a federation should sort of retain control of, or are they better off making that as widely accessible as possible, whether that's to rights holders or to kind of super fans, if you like, for them to turn that content into something else which might then be shared and kind of gain a life of itself?
I think there's I haven't seen it yet. I'd be very interested for anyone who'd like to try it out. But I think there's a real B2C opportunity for archive content. Why wouldn't you let fans create their goal of the season package of 20 different things, and then you could quite easily do this, and then have create competition from that, a bit like fantasy meets video production meets punditry, and put some of these things into the hands of fans. I don't know. I'm not a creative myself. I'm a techie, but I'm pretty sure that if you really get some creative minds around the how content can be used, you'll find that there'll be some really innovative little business models that come through, really engaging things. So I'm all for, yes, some archive content is too valuable to put directly into the public domain. Of course, rights holders want to commercially monetize that through broadcast rights, etc. But there's a whole load of other opportunities out there for that sort of that fan involvement, user generated engagement, video creative engagement. Try some things out. For all of my colleagues here on the panels would be more than happy to sort of come up with ideas and work with you. We're technologists. We're looking for the creatives to give ideas that we can build tools to enable. So.
And on that point that you mentioned, Tom, about sort of reaching out and getting in touch with the panel and wanting to come up with solutions and that kind of approach, I just wanted to ask to all of you, really, if there is a particular way in which you have to work with federations that might differ, perhaps, from the broadcast and production clients that you might have. Sam, I don't know if you want to pick up on this point, but whether you have to kind of tailor the way in which you work, and even the products and services as well, because I think it's probably fairly true to say that the size of the teams that some federations might have when it comes to creating and dealing with distribution of content are going to be smaller than for your clients that you might have in the broadcast and production world. So what kind of impact does that have on the way that you choose to engage with them?
Well, I think so. We engage with federations sometimes, but a lot of the times we use service providers who are partners. So they have the knowledge and they have the skill set within their organisations to fulfil the requirements for the federation. But to use Tom's point about a small marketing team for a federation of maybe 5-6 people, I think the important thing for that, if you assume that they're not broadcast experts in terms of content creation, if you keep things nice and simple for them, so we try and make our products easy to use so that they will use them more often. I think that's probably from our side the most important thing, is to make sure that it's not a complicated setup. There aren't too many requirements, all of those things, so that someone can sit in their home and produce the content as required. And so cloud helps that sometimes, with NDI and those other products that we have in the suite of our products. Those are all the sort of ways of just easing the content creation exercise.
Chris, would you agree with that? Do you think there's a need to sort of tailor technical solutions and services for use by smaller, less technical teams?
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting, right? We, as the MediaKind, our kind of history has been a lot more on maybe a big operator or broadcast technology department, right? That's who we would typically work with. And in the sports space, especially when we come to work with federations, everything is driven through marketing and from the marketing teams, right? Which means the conversation has to be different. The way we present the tools that we have to be different as well. We're not talking about checking feature lists on an RFQ, right? We're actually looking at enabling specific business outcomes for that part of the organization, which will always be tied to data and eyeballs and reach of their platform. So that's definitely a big shift. And for us, it's something we've been doing. And I think we've started to do that quite successfully with certain customers. But it also goes to then, how do we make our technology more accessible? Because again, you want a different group of people to be able to use your technology and to access your services. So simplifying user experiences, making things a lot more flow or solution focused, as opposed to different components that you have to plug together and read a big manual to figure out how to use, right? And that's the shift. And I think cloud actually, as Sam said, helps to enable that in some respects, because cloud lets you stand up these platforms relatively simply with repeatability. And then once you can do that and you've enabled those services, and today we do that with our kind of AV pipe, right? How we deliver the linear content. Then you can start thinking about things as use cases and enablers for something that a customer might want to do, as opposed to a technical feature. And that's something on us as a vendor we are doing and need to do more of, to kind of open access in the same way as they want to allow access for their fans into the content. We want to allow access into our technology for those businesses, because it's key for our growth and it's key for how we develop our own technology portfolio. So big shift in this world, while still working, on maybe some of those other traditional projects as well.
Mathieu, is it the same for you guys as well? Are you finding, or who do you find typically that you have to deal with when you're working with federations? Who's
Yeah,
driving that content strategy?
absolutely. I clearly along the same line, dealing definitely with more on the side of the operations, potentially even with the sports side of operations. So clearly, we definitely don't are not engaging with the same stakeholders as we would on a broadcast facility that maybe is more towards the technical side, the production side. So clearly, or the way we approach those projects is very, very different, with very different expectations of the outcome. So just like my colleagues here, I think one of the things we've done a lot, lately, because the market demands it, is really adapting some of the broadcast tools to that audience, to that market, essentially. So really extracting the value out of the broadcast and proven broadcast tools that we've developed over the years, in making that so accessible that it's essentially a website that we can give people and they log into, and it's completely cloud operated. So completely abstracting the technical complexity of a production or of a creation, so that you can give that to anyone without any technical broadcast background and operate it. Interestingly enough, we are having conversation with leagues and federations that even told us we have no production staff. So this will be created and produced by some die-hardcore fans that really want to participate, lend a hand, just to promote the sport, to promote the club, to promote the league. And obviously, we cannot give those users the kind of tool that we would typically propose to a broadcaster. It's just not a right fit. So it's all about how do we elevate and bring that level of quality while making it extremely accessible. I think really this is one of the key drivers here.
And you touched on the cloud in your answer just now, Mathieu. Can you give us a sense of any other technologies that might really be helping to kind of drive this and really enable a lot of the solutions that that you've all touched on so far? I wonder where, for example, where AI fits into this in terms of helping to provide some of the opportunities that you've mentioned, and also in terms of kind of ease of access as well for federations.
Yeah, it's an excellent summary already in your question, in the sense that I think cloud and AI in general are two technology that really enable a lot more professional grade content without necessarily requiring professionals to operate it. I think one thing we're seeing is definitely the level of automation you can get to, for instance, in having a way to curate the content in advance, to select the right moments in the game, the right plays, so that ultimately there is still a human decision of, well, is that something I'm going to use? Is that something that I'm going to put a graphic on? Do I want to illustrate it? These are still editorial decisions, but nevertheless, the content selection, the curation, the data linking as well is something that can be enabled, can be facilitated by AI. From tracking players to do some illustration work. Of course, broadcaster wants maybe to leverage AI or maybe leverage their internal resources to it. How I think we can make an impact and differentiate, I think, is on enabling those workflow in an automated way. So having an algorithm that will actually do this kind of tracking, so that ultimately remains the user decision to use that or not. But nevertheless, the groundwork is done, and it's all about decision making and essentially whether you want to leverage a piece of content or not.
That's really, I was just gonna, something you said there was, I found quite interesting, because actually with AI, right, it does ultimately let you do more with less. And I think one of the key, certainly the key conversations, and and the things I've seen with a lot of our discussions with federations and others, has been about how do I take the live, which is ultimately my most valuable piece of content, right? It's the one that I can charge the most for, I get the most eyeballs on, it's the most engaging. How can I take that 1 hour or 3 hour event and turn it into multiple opportunities to create engagement? And obviously, the further away from the point in time it happened, the less that engagement potentially is. So the quicker you can do it, i.e., with machine learning, AI tools, automation, I think the better, right? And I think we're going to see a lot of that technology feed in to help drive the various kind of pipelines that we want to build, right? And automation is great because it lets you do things quickly and bring things up and tear things down with relatively low cost impact on that. And I think that's another interesting angle to this as we start to look at the more content, the more angles you want to bring, and the more types of content you want to create. Well, there's a cost there, right? And we know actually federations that don't sign the £4 billion rights deals are the ones that are wanting really to explore this technology avenue, which means there is a cost implication that we as technology vendors have to be mindful of.
Yeah, I think just to add on that one as well, I mean, AI in some of our products, of course, is supporting the federations with their commercial revenues because, ad insertion, LED replacement, all of those, elements, and we have an AI Kia. And of course, being able to do that means that they can regionalize their feeds. They can then, go and chase commercial deals based in that region. So it is a massive part of the technology solution, I think, for all of us moving forward. Yeah.
Fantastic. Okay, well, listen, I'm afraid that's all we've got time for, but thank you so much for that. So much insight there, and hopefully lots that's going to be useful to all of the federations, clubs and leagues that have been watching today as well. So thank you very much. Thanks, Sam, Tom, Mathieu and Chris.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.
Okay, Will, back to you.